Now on YTV, Gene Nocon features the world of natural history photography.
Deep in the forest, nothing stirs. Or does it? Today I'm in the company of Heather Angel, one of the most respected natural history photographers in Britain. Whether she's up to her knees in mud in the wild or in the more controlled setting of her special studio, in the next half an hour, Heather will come out from behind her camouflage to reveal the skills, tricks, and dedication that puts her at the top of her profession. Certainly got enough gear here, Heather. You gonna use this all? It's 5:30 on a rather gray summer's morning, the ideal time for any natural history photographer to be on the move. Today is no exception. Normally at this unearthly hour, I'm still fast asleep, but this morning I'm joining Heather Angel on a special photographic safari in the New Forest. Given the choice of any location in this country, Heather would choose the New Forest with its marvelous range of flora and fauna. Nearly 1,000 years ago, William the Conqueror created this area in a corner between the Solent and the sea. The land consisted of relatively infertile woodland, furzy waste scattered with farms and homesteads, but it was to become a royal hunting preserve, a place where King William and his followers could find amusement and relaxation. Today, the New Forest covers approximately 140 square miles, but now slightly more people visit here, over 8 million a year. But it's still a place where you can feel alone and in the wild. By now it's 6:30, and we're about to approach our first location. Through careful management by the Forestry Commission, the New Forest is home to many species of animal, plant, reptile, and insect, some unique to the area. The deer, for which the forest is justly famous, are no longer hunted, and it's these that Heather is hoping to photograph first on her New Forest safari. But we have to approach the hide cautiously.
Can you see where?
Oh, yes, I see. Right. What do you see out there? Which one?
They're all fallow.
Oh, fallow.
Yes, yes. Oh, I think they're beginning to move a bit. But, you know, it's really the early bird that gets the worm, as it were. If you're prepared to get up at the crack of dawn, you're going to see a lot more wildlife than if you saunter out mid-morning.
Is that a pheasant down below there?
Where's that?
Down there.
Yes, it is. Dead right. Oh, we'll have that.
I thought they came in pairs. There's a hell of a lot of wind coming through here, isn't there?
Yeah, but it's just as well because it's blowing from the deer to us. So they won't pick up our scent. If it was blowing from us to them, they'd sense us very quickly.
They would be very, very close.
And, you know, if you're stalking any mammals in the wild, the one thing you must be is downwind of them. And you can get a lot closer that way.
Just so I didn't put any aftershave on this morning.
Right, yes.
Sorry about that.
I was actually here a few weeks ago in the evening, and the light then was gorgeous.
In the evening?
Yes, that's another good time to camp. Nice. It's good, isn't it?
Just had to sit here and wait for all this to happen.
Yes. But it doesn't matter how many times you've done it before. Each morning is different, you know. It's good. But one thing that I notice if I'm out with amateurs is that they spend quite a bit on their equipment, but they're not very keen at using up a lot of film. You know, they tend to be rather mean on film, which is a pity because having spent time driving to a place and then spending a lot of money on equipment as well, They really ought to be prepared to take more than just 1 or 2 shots. I mean, you'll see me, I use a lot of film.
Over the years, Heather has taken more than 250,000 photographs, and these are used in advertising and editorial, as well as natural history books.
That's quite nice of them out there, I like that.
All her pictures need to be perfect, both in clarity and composition. And the light this morning in the New Forest is far from ideal. At the second hide, the deer are fed by forest keepers. It gives visitors an opportunity to see fallow deer at close quarters, but for Heather, it is a rather unnatural setting.
I'm very fussy about backgrounds and about foregrounds and so on. You know, I like to have them looking reasonably natural. I mean, and this at the moment, you can't pretend it's anything other than deer at bait. Right, well, we're here, and I think we might go in search of some snakes, don't you? And if we go up here to Hollidays Hill, we'll probably find some up there. Unfortunately, that some people have a great fear of snakes, and instinctively, if they're out camping in the forest, they see a snake, the immediate reaction is to kill it, which is really very sad, because the grass snake is perfectly harmless. The smooth snake is also harmless and is very rare. New Forest is one of the few places in Britain where you can actually find it. And the adder, okay, can be venomous, but it wouldn't kill you. It would just sort of give you a sort of rather nasty reaction. So if you saw an adder, the best thing is to avoid it.
Which camera do you want?
I want the one without a strap. It's got a short lens on it.
Right. Short lens?
Yeah, that's right, because I want to try and get it in its habitat, you see.
All right, let me get this out of the way. Okay. That's a look. That's a look.
Not bad, not bad.
Well, take enough shots. What are you going to do? You need more film?
Finish my film, yeah.
I'll get some more. What is it?
K200, yeah.
It takes time and a fair degree of luck to photograph reptiles in their natural habitat. So here in the New Forest, there is a reptillery where the public can view and learn to recognize snakes and lizards in a more controlled environment.
Oh, I see it.
See that taking pictures?
Yeah, I've got my camera.
But you haven't got it here? Haven't got it here? No. Do you like to photograph animals?
Yeah.
Do you? Do you
Martha does. Martha's brilliant.
Where's Martha?
Yeah.
Hey, have you got your camera with you? Well, that's very brave. What a pity, because you could get some nice shots here. Yes. I'm very pleased to see a lot of children here. I noticed some of them have got cameras. They haven't got very long lenses, so I think they'll be a little disappointed when they look at their pictures. But nonetheless, you know, if there's a group of adders there, they'll be able to see them, and they'll be able to show their friends and say, you know, I saw some adders in the New Forest. And I think this is marvellous, because certainly I, as a child, wasn't taken out and shown things. I mean, my interest in natural history has come really through my grandmother and wildflowers, and come rather late in life. But certainly, you know, I think the more young children can be taught about some of our animals, the better, and the conservation as a whole will have a much greater hope in the future.
Heather is just as fascinated by still life as by wild animals. So the next stop on our safari is this corner of the New Forest, which is rich in magnificent beech trees.
I love the New Forest. You know, I come down here quite a lot, so I can come down in an hour's time, and a little bit earlier than this is better. In fact, in May, when the leaves are just coming out on the beaches, you know, and you can, it's lovely fresh green, and you can see right through the trees. It's a bit thick now. But, you know, when I come into a woodland, I don't just sort of idly look ahead. Although I'm very small, I do look down, and I look up, and I look around. My eyes are constantly moving to see something that I might want to photograph. Don't make too many ripples, because the whole thing's undulating up and down, okay?
All right.
That's nice. This is water crowfoot, and the flowers are coming up above the surface. That's good, I like that.
Heather's enthusiasm and dedication means that there is always plenty to photograph. Miles from the New Forest, in the heart of Surrey, is the family home and the headquarters of Heather's business and her library of photographs, which are sold and loaned all over the world. Heather met her husband, Martin, at university, where they were both members of the Bristol Underwater Society. With a keen interest in natural history from an early age, Heather always knew that she would become either a biologist or a zoologist.
Zoology was my life, very much so. And it was only after I graduated and went to Norway on an underwater expedition with Martin that I thought, I better have a camera. And here was me, 21, never had a camera in my life before.
Was that the start of your photography?
It was, but I didn't in those days expect or want to be a photographer. I was using it very much as a tool for my zoology and marine biology. And so photography came much later, really. And I decided that I could perhaps maybe take pictures to write articles and give lectures, and that was all fairly low-key. And then eventually I thought, well, maybe I can make a living out of it.
You make photography sound so easy. Is it something that can be picked up as well by amateurs? Can they get into it as easily as yourself?
I think it's something that comes with a love of natural history. I think that must be paramount. Without that, nobody could succeed as a wildlife photographer at all. And then I think it's a question of going out and doing it. I mean, I know that I write books and hope people will read them and pick up some tips, but that isn't enough. You have to go out and do it and be very patient. That's the important thing. I mean, animals will not do things to order by any means, and sometimes you're lucky and sometimes you have to just wait. I think what some people don't have when they photograph natural history subjects is the ability to see an interesting composition. I judge a tremendous amount, and one could weep sometimes at the exciting animals that you see other people photograph, particularly abroad, and they're placed bang in the middle of the frame, they haven't looked at lighting, and that is something I do look at very, very carefully, the background in relation to the subject, how it's lit. So, I mean, I may get into a tortuous camera position in order to get a better shot, so I'm not just preoccupied with the moth or the spider or whatever. I'm looking at it in relation to where it is and the lighting and so on.
Well, when working outdoors where you don't have the control over lighting, are you very aware of what the time of day is in terms of when the best photograph should be taken?
Yes, that's very true, but in fact you have slight control because you can use reflectors to modify the lighting on flowers and so on. With action shots, right, you can't. And there are some animals that are only active at dawn or dusk, so there's no point in going out in the middle of the day looking for them. And we've seen that with the deer, of course. You know, we had to get up early to see them.
Time relative to photography, but not to eating. I mean, meal times are totally irrelevant.
Oh yes, I mean that agreed. I mean, food and drink is the last thing I think about when I'm working. And you know, I will go all day without eating. I mean, if there's something exciting happening.
Is there an element of luck?
Yes, of course there is, but I wouldn't like to put that too high on the list. I mean, I should think the proportion of pictures that I've taken that are lucky and that are real winners must be very, very low. A lot of it is planning, isn't it?
Yeah, you can encourage luck by being in the right place at the right time and to know your animal, what it's going to do. And so there's quite a lot of research that Heather has to do.
A tremendous amount. I mean, people don't realise this. They think I just go out on safari sort of every other month and have a marvellous time. But I spend a tremendous amount of time on the phone, writing letters, checking out where things will be at a certain time. Because, you know, that's invaluable in the long run. It saves time.
This photograph of the flying frog, which is embroidered on your sweatshirt,
Yes.
Was this under a controlled situation?
It was, yes indeed. It was photographed in a studio, looking through glass, and it's a frog that came from Costa Rica and was brought back to England and taken back to Costa Rica, I might add.
The flying frog may be Heather's most famous photograph, but there are many other personal favorites.
This picture of a beadlet sea anemone is the first picture I took after I was given an exacta by my father for my 21st birthday, taken in an aquarium with a single flash. Not very exciting, to be honest, but, you know, it's something that sold quite a few times in the early days. We're now looking at giant tortoises taken in the Galapagos, wallowing in their pools, and I don't think anywhere else in the world will I see a sight quite like this. It was remarkable, I must say. Seaweeds are very underrated plants. They ought to be photographed by more people because they're really quite exciting. They come in a lovely range of shapes and colours. I mean, these are just a collection I photographed in North Devon. I did actually use a polarising filter on the shot to get rid of the skylight reflection, so it's enriching the colours slightly. We now come to a picture of a fungus dispersing its spore mass. Rain is actually dropping on it, or more accurate, Martin is simulating rain dropping on it. And that was taken a long time ago and is easily far and away my best-selling plant picture. Another studio shot, in this case a wood mouse, which took its own picture by breaking a light beam, not facing the camera, but quite naturally creeping up on this bit of wood with the moss and so on, and taken when I wasn't even there, at night. Now, puffins are much photographed, and I've done them lots of times with fish in their bills and standing in front of their burrows, but here is a very lucky shot where two puffins were standing on a rock, facing the same direction, and suddenly one turned. So there's lovely juxtaposition of the heads, which really makes the picture, I think. Another shot from Sri Lanka, this time an Indian elephant charging, where I was in a jeep, and the one place you don't want to be with an elephant charging is in a stationary jeep with the engine switched off. In fact, I got several frames with dust flying and its trunk up, and it just suddenly lost interest for no apparent reason, fortunately, and off it went. The place I went to the first time in February was Baja, California in Mexico, particularly to do the grey whales coming in to calve. And I was amazed how close we got to them. And here we see a whale leaping out of the water. Rather a grey old day, but with Kodachrome 200 I could get away with a fast shutter speed. And Iceland's a country I've only been to once. I'd like to go back there because it's full of very stark, dramatic scenery. Here we're looking at a waterfall plunging down over basalt lava. One of my very favourite pictures I took there, taken with a 1-second exposure, so we can see the white water, blurred and soft, falling on the black basalt. And I guess my toughest trip was up to Mount Ruwenzori, or the Mountains of the Moon in Uganda some years ago, where I was commissioned to go and photograph the vegetation, very bizarre plants, including this giant tree lobelia. We're just looking at a close-up of one here, and this will appear in my new nature photography book.
For Heather is a prolific writer. She has a regular column in a weekly photographic magazine and has written 37 books on natural history and photography. The 38th, Nature in Focus, has just been published, and during my visit, Heather was looking through some of the draft pages with her editor. Having her work published is a real spur to her photography.
It makes me strive to get better and better pictures. I think you see people who take pictures for the love of it don't really necessarily have to produce such high quality stuff consistently. The fact that I get paid for doing all these books and things means that will then generate money to finance future trips. So if I just sat back and said, well, I'll just do it because I enjoy doing it, I wouldn't be able to travel to a fraction of the places I now go to. So the whole thing has to be a commercial enterprise, otherwise it just doesn't work.
You think the interest in nature photography is because of the number of books that have been available, or?
I think it's basically two things. Yes, I think it's books, but also the brilliant programs on television. I'm sure that's done more than anything, to be honest.
Are all your photographs truthful?
Yes, I would hope they are.
I think that's one of the points that Heather tries to make.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying about when I'm working in the studio, I guess, rather more so, because in the field, you know, I mean, there really isn't any question that you can't take what's there. In the studio, I mean, yes, I have to make a conscious decision about the backgrounds and the setups that I put the animals in amongst. There are occasions, I must admit, where it may not be possible to get the right vegetation for a particular animal. But what I don't say ever in that caption then, that this was shot in Costa Rica or wherever. I mean, I actually will find in all my photographic books, I do say when it's a studio shot. So I'm not in fact pretending I was stalking it out in the wild. So in that respect, I'm always truthful, yes.
Yes, you have portrait shots and you have ecological shots. And it's the ecological shots where a picture can be just as much of a lie as saying black is white. And you do occasionally come across pictures in books where the art editor has selected a picture because it looks striking, and we look at it and we cringe because that picture is a lie.
Well, yes,
yeah.
any biologist or naturalist will know if you fake something. So it isn't worth it as far as I'm concerned, because somebody somewhere will notice it, and you know, I have too much to lose if I do that.
Well, we know where your fields are. Where's your studio?
Oh, well, it's tucked away in a corner in the bottom of the garden.
Heather uses the controlled conditions of a studio when photographing animals in the wild proves impractical. It is at the bottom of the garden.
Yeah, but it's right away from the telephone. I can work on my own in peace, which is great. But it's nice and quiet and well away from the phone. Come in. It's really like a little small lab, you see, and I have various setups on different benches. This is a wet bench at the moment because I'm taking some tropical fish in this aquarium. Now, if you come around here, I think you'll see one of the major problems with any aquarium. You see my hand is being reflected in there, and also the lettering on the lens. Yes. And that would ruin, obviously, any shot. So what I do is I have this matte black board with a hole cut out, and that's a glassless filter mount. And I simply just put this, screw it in as if it was a filter.
I'll help you with this here.
Yes, thanks. That's grand. That's it.
There you go.
There we go. And then you can see, if you look down the camera, it's removed all the reflections. I've got this shell that's been cut away here to show the spiralling. Now, if you blast something like this with a light, rather obviously, what happens is that lots of reflections comes off the shiny part of the shell, and that isn't really a very good idea, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use a much narrower beam, virtually behind the shell, so that it's only lighting, just catching the edge of the spirals. And then if you could hold that mirror to fill in the shadow areas there. Let me just have a look. I think that's going to do it, don't you? Well, really, photographing subjects like tarantulas or anything that's slightly dangerous and venomous should be done only with great care and knowing what you're doing. I wouldn't advise anybody to rush off and try and do this at all, by any means. There's one cautionary note I think I would add is that in anyone's enthusiasm to get a photograph, you must remember that the welfare of the animal must always come first. And really being a good naturalist first is the most important thing about being a good wildlife photographer.
So what advice does Heather have for a natural history photographer just starting out?
Well, that if they felt they wanted to do it full-time, that it was very, very hard work and very tough, and there are a lot of people out there wanting to do exactly that. But if they are prepared to work at it, if they're prepared to write, because it's very much easier to sell pictures with text, then I'm sure they would succeed. It is becoming increasingly difficult to produce new, different, exciting pictures as each successive year one sees so much brilliant stuff being produced all over the place. I would suggest they might well have a second string to their bow, which then would help finance their photography, as indeed lecturing did mine in the early days.
If I were able to offer you any assignment anywhere in the world, what would it be and why?
I guess it would probably be, amazingly, perhaps to the Antarctic, because I have never managed to get there, and it's a part of the world I felt that I very much like to go and visit. And it would complete my continent, that I would then have visited and photographed in every continent.